Welcome to the Zweigletter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting advice and guidance in your ear. Zweig Group's team of experts have spent more than 3 decades elevating the industry by helping AEP and environmental consulting firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver invaluable management, industry, client, marketing, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweigletter Podcasts, elevating the design industry one episode at a time.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of the Zweigletter Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you today. As always, we have got a great episode for you today. And one of the things that we're actually doing with the Zweigletter in 2024 is that we're going to seasons. So each year, we're going to have a couple of seasons per year. And so I'm excited to have our current guest with us, and that would be Dave Witsken. Dave is the CEO of UES. And Dave is also UES is a 3-time Hot Firm winner. So they were the number 1 firm in the Hot Firm Awards 3 years in a row. And I mean, suffice it to say, you guys are obviously doing something right. But without further ado, Dave, I want to welcome you to the Zweigletter Podcast. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Randy. Great to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, UES, like I said before, has been named the number 1 hot firm by Zweig Group for 3 consecutive years. What do you, as CEO of UES, attribute this consistent success to?
Yeah, thank you. First, it's been a great honor to receive that. So, especially since the Kansas City Chiefs are all after the ever elusive three-peat.
Yes.
But first, I just want to say one thing. We think we're running a great business, but I do want to say that I think this weekly newsletters really do a great job of laying out concepts through various articles that make great sense. I really like the fact that the articles are concise, they're relevant, and I refer to those a lot. So I think there's some really great secrets in this weekly newsletters on articles on very relevant topics. For us, I'd say, 3 things. I think first always it starts with strategy. And that comes out a lot in the articles. For us, and we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, but from our philosophy is that acquisitions, service lines, and markets all need to fit together. And that, for me, is really a prerequisite. It sets the stage for cross-selling, having 1 + 1 = 3, which is an overused term, or better together, what people talk about when they talk about acquisitions. So having a good strategy enables good organic growth, both revenue and people. So not only growing revenue of the firm, but also having people be able to grow within the firm, I think comes from having a good strategy. So on the revenue growth side, cross-selling for revenue growth and adding more value to customers. And on the people side, the ability to share best practices and for people working together. But then it also enables good acquisitions. So expanding our portfolio geographically or for service lines, or just our resume. And when a target for us joins our platform, we want it to be evident to the employees and the customers of why that makes sense for them. So we have a good track record of growth post-close on acquisitions, and more employees are crossing legacy company boundaries to grow their careers within the UES enterprise, either in the same job or in a new role. So I think those are some of the keys to our success.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, we could do a podcast on each one of those topics because there's so much there. I've talked to a number of your peers in the industry, in the design industry space, about the global aspect of consolidation in the industry and where do they think it's headed. And certainly with you guys, I mean, you're 4,000 people now. You have I've kind of lost track of the number of acquisitions that you guys have done, but you guys are not shy about really looking out and trying to identify appropriate opportunities to grow UES. But what do you think what is that growth strategy? How are you able to incorporate that while bringing in so many new organizations into the fold of the umbrella that is UES?
Yeah, good question. And I think that matters a lot to us because when we acquire a company, their history becomes our history and vice versa. So, and that really translates to a few screens for us. First of all, obviously, we want to make sure the company fits our strategy and our culture. And that's really not for everybody. It'd be surprised. I think we actually decide not to pursue more deals than we have pursued with targets. Second of all, we want to do deals with leaders and companies that where the leadership wants to stay. It makes for an easier transition with customers and employees. We prefer to buy companies that can grow, that want to grow with us, and keeping the leadership in our mind ensures that. We like targets that also really care about what happens to their employees and their customers post-close, and that those are part of the very early stage conversations, because that's sort of a test of whether or not that aligns with our culture. After that, obviously, we want to make sure the company is well run and it wants to grow, like I said. And together, we can really see a very credible path to growth. The way a company acts during due diligence is, to me, a window into the culture from both them and us. And we like when both sides use the term honorable to describe the transaction process after close. And then when we think ahead to the day of close and how we're going to share this news with employees and customers, we want to have clear vision about the story we want to tell collectively. And does it really inspire a better together narrative that makes sense? Sometimes if that conversation has to be forced too much, for us, it's a theme that concern that the strategy really may not be a good fit. I've heard the phrase from one of my industry colleagues that they use that I really like, which is the best acquisitions are aligned on fit, financials, and future. And I think that's very concisely lays it out and makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I like the 3 Fs, fit, financials, and future. As I hear you share this, one of the things that doesn't escape me about all this is just the amount of time and effort that goes into managing expectations on both sides of the corner, right? If you think about it. So not just the expectations of the company that you want to bring into the fold of UES, but then also the expectations of you and your senior leadership team, maybe the expectations of some of the key market leaders that are going to be responsible for helping to incorporate this new organization, this new entity into the UES fold. How do you go about, as a leader, as the CEO of UES, how do you go about managing those expectations and helping people through that process? Because I'm a firm believer that when you always see successful outcomes when expectations are managed properly.
That's a great point. It's like anything, right? Planning and good planning ensures good outcomes. I think integration planning starts during the due diligence process. And I think that's really the key, is that if you're having those conversations about, first of all, what is integration, defining what that means, and then having a timeline for things so there's no surprises after close. I think it makes it so much nicer for customers, for employees, for the target, for the former owners, to be aligned. Now you're just executing a plan. I think the second thing is, for the majority of the employees in an acquisition, it's a prearranged marriage, right? Really, usually only the first two, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 principals are involved, certainly in family and founder-led businesses, in the discussions all the way through due diligence, which is smart because confidentiality is critically important because some deals don't get done. So then everybody finds out about, the rest of the employees find out about it the day before or the day of close. And I think from there, then it's really a very intentional plan about communication, making sure people understand what and what is not going to change, or what is going to change and when, and being able to outline that for people on the day of close. So there's a very minimal period of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is inevitable with change. I think those are really the 2 keys in our mind.
Yeah. And I mean, again, there's a certain amount of hand-holding that goes into that whole process. So without that, I mean, you run the risk of not getting the outcome that you're looking for. So, yeah. So you wrote an article for the Zweig letter, and I appreciate all the kind words that you put out about Zweig Group, and specifically the Zweig letter, which has run for Oh man, since 92, I think is when Mark first started the newsletter. So it goes back a while, even before my first foray with Zweig, White and Associates, which was then Zweig, White and Associates back in 97. But you're absolutely right. The newsletter has been kind of a catch-all of ideation and great ideas surrounding this industry and surrounding this space. And you wrote an article about, or rather you were interviewed for an article in the TZL at the end of last year, 2023. And we'll put a link to it in the show notes about growth in AEC. And you talked about the rich history that UES has. I have a question for you specifically as it pertains to like company culture and employee development. And it sounds like you're trying to specifically maintain and build upon the history that you guys have had with your employees. But one of the core things that you guys talk about is the acronym STRIVE. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. And then I have a follow-up question about personal and professional development. But can you tell us a little bit about STRIVE and what it means for UES?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. Thanks for asking. So STRIVE is an acronym that stands for safety, teamwork, responsiveness, integrity, value, and excellence. And what I like about it was developed by our team for our team. And it was really a very collaborative process. And it's really, and for me, it was inspiring to be a part of, because the goal was to define a set of, an acronym that was easy for people to remember, that would define the way we work and interact with each other and other stakeholders of the business. That would be a North Star that would define how we work and would define things that we wanted to be known for. So that all culminated in several, really the main session were a couple of days, and then it kind of evolved a little bit after that over a couple of weeks. What we like about them is that those words are relevant to customers, to employees, and to shareholders, investors. They're also relevant at both the individual and the company level. So when we do, asked about how does it impact the culture, when we do performance reviews and we think about the performance of employees, it's not just about what got accomplished, but how that was done and the way that people went about their work. And so we prefer when people are living and leading those company values. Last year, we implemented I'll call it a People's Choice Awards, where employees could nominate their fellow employees for going above and beyond to exemplify the values. And the submissions that we got were really impressive. It was great to read about our team. And then we received literally hundreds of those recommendations or nominations about fellow employees. And then we recognized those people. And we'll continue to do that. It's been a great way for us to help make sure that the values are something more than just on a poster.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like everybody's kind of all in, right, with regard to what your approach with employees. And I know that you guys have taken significant pains and effort to invest in advanced training programs and paid certifications for employees. Can you share maybe just some of the success stories stemming from those initiatives? Because I've always said this, and I won't stay on my soapbox long, but whenever I've done leadership training, I've always said that if you're not developing people above and beyond what your capabilities are as a leader, you're missing out on that opportunity to really grow those individuals. And it sounds like what you guys are doing at UES is to really put your money where your mouth is when it comes to that. But I would love for you maybe to share maybe a success story or two stemming from some of those personal and professional development initiatives at UES.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the best test of that is we have numerous examples where people have grown their careers within the company. In fact, several of our senior leaders on our senior leadership team have started in entry-level roles and have continued to advance their careers through both classroom training as well as on-the-job training through career movements. And as I said, have advanced to some very senior positions. So the opportunity absolutely exists within the company to do that. And we prefer that. Our goal is to promote from within and to continue to develop people to be ready for promotional opportunities when the time is right. So we prioritize internal promotion. We're also providing more opportunities to network among peers across the company, especially as new acquisitions join the fold. And I hope in the future that networking allows people to develop faster and that advancement can happen faster and more frequently within the company. I think another really important aspect of this is we've also made available the opportunity for employees to invest in the company they work for at a certain level. And although we are private equity backed, all of the portfolio companies that make up UES have a higher percentage of employee owners today than they did before joining UES. And I think that's a misnomer in the industry. We want to hire great people and then provide for them an opportunity to grow beyond their financially, beyond their salary, their benefits, our annual incentive programs to participate in the company's success as we grow. So I would call us a PE-backed, employee-owned company, which is true. The largest ownership group is employees. And there's a huge misperception in the industry that if you're not an ESOP, you can't have a meaningful number of employee owners. And I'm glad that we have the number of people engaged in the company in that way.
Yeah, and as I'm thinking about that, because I have talked to several firms that are ESOPs and they find comfort in that approach, right? And I think it really just depends on how you set the table for your employees. Speaking of which, it's my understanding that you guys are constantly on the lookout for new talent. And I think maybe at the time that original article was being written back in December, there were about 300 positions that you guys were looking to fill. And maybe some of those have been filled, but I would love for you just to talk about the one issue that our industry faces, which is recruitment and retention, that we don't have a true solution for. And you can't just acquire all the people, right? I mean, it would be great if you could, but you will have to bring people in through executive search efforts, through general recruitment efforts, through word of mouth referrals. How is UES separating itself from the rest of the firms out there when it comes to finding and attracting great talent to work with you?
Yeah, we have a pretty aggressive outreach on that. Like everybody, I would guess. I hope that, and I think like other companies too, at us being a company of scale, we have our largest investment this year is in technology tools to help affect internal productivity. And I think, I'm pretty excited about some of the things that we have working in that front. We have a number of initiatives in flight. But you're right. I mean, we have an aggressive outreach. And then I think it's some of the things we talked about before: culture, the opportunity for people to advance their careers, the opportunity to participate as an employee shareholder. I think those are the things that help drive retention. And working on great projects. One of the things that we're seeing now is we bring together, and you mentioned it earlier, a number of companies now, over 25 acquisitions that make up UES, that having a shared resume allows those portfolio companies to take on projects that they otherwise would not have been able to do. And a lot of people that join this industry want to be part of mega trends, want to work on great projects. And I think that the aggregation of the business, the enterprise, has a greater ability to do that. So, and I hope through that, we're providing people opportunities to work on, cooler projects.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what, I mean, certainly people want to do work that's relevant and that matters at the end of the day. And it sounds like you have a wide enough berth of opportunities that you're able to kind of sink your teeth into, that, you're consistently feeding your employees new opportunities that they may not have gotten in previous organizations. So there is that benefit. So.
Yeah, I agree. We hope so.
So tell me this, because I do, for anyone listening that wants kind of a sneak peek behind the curtain when it comes specifically to M&A, what criteria do you use to evaluate a potential company for acquisition? And I'm only asking that simply because I know that our industry is graying every day. And when I say gray, I mean like gray hair, like the gray hair that I have. And, the reality is that none of us are getting any younger. And there are those that have held on to leadership roles or held on to companies maybe longer than they thought they should have. And now they're like, okay, maybe what do I need to do to position my company to be attractive as a potential acquisition? And I'd be curious to know what's the criteria that you use specifically? I mean, you mentioned a little bit of it with regard to looking at fit financials in the future, but specifically as it pertains to mergers and acquisitions, what do you like boots on the ground? How do you evaluate potential companies for acquisition? What does that specific criteria look like?
Yeah, good question. Is because there is some frenzy, I'd say, in the marketplace right now, and people we've seen through Zweig and others. You can see that there's been some, especially private equity money going into the space, and that's gotten a lot more people thinking about selling. And the ESOP model is on the decline, and private equity-backed companies are growing. And we're a private equity-backed platform. And I think back to your point on timing. For us, it's important that the leadership stays with the business. I think when you've run a business for so long, sometimes it's hard to define really what makes the company special. Even though you helped create it, you helped build it, it becomes so routine that it's hard for you to really define it, especially when you don't have context really from other businesses. So it takes time to unearth that. And when the leader stays, and that's a big criteria for us, because we want people that can join the enterprise, be a part of the team, continue to make sure that we can work together to figure out what the special things are of that business. Because it's our belief that every one of the acquisitions that join our enterprise has an opportunity to impact the overall outcome. And it's really important. That's a really important cultural thing for us. We use the term no conquering heroes. So our view is that everyone matters. Every acquisition has an opportunity to better the enterprise. But sometimes it's not evident through due diligence or even in the first few weeks or months of exactly what that is. But I've learned that we can learn something from every one of the companies that makes up this business. So it takes time to understand that. When the leader stays and then starts to develop context by working with other people in the firm, then they can start to recognize where, hey, we had a strength here that I really wasn't aware that was a strength. And then we can start figuring out how to cascade those valuable lessons across the business. So having the leadership engaged post-close is really an important feature for us. I think a lot of times in this space, sometimes people, as you said, wait too long and they want to sell their business when they're ready to retire. They also underestimate their impact on the business, on the profitability of the business. And so sometimes founders have designed themselves into the process, and it's hard to extract that right away. So I think my encouragement to your question was, if you're thinking about that 3 to 5 years from now, that's a good time to start talking to people, as opposed to 3 weeks from now or 3 months from now, you're planning to retire, because people, I think in general, want someone to stay, some leader to stay for those reasons, to help a smooth transition for employees and customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to belabor the point that it's very rare for a design firm owner who is going to go through an acquisition to walk away with the proverbial golden parachute like instantly. I mean, that doesn't happen in other verticals. It doesn't happen in the tech space. I mean, a lot of times you have people that are like, hey, we need you here for the next 24 to 36 months or more. And you would have to imagine, with the very nature of the way that business is done in the design industry space, that it would be incumbent upon those former founders who are now part of an acquisition to understand the importance that their role plays in a smooth transition.
Yeah, agreed. And there's a difference between being present and being engaged.
Yeah.
I think it's our job to create an environment where people can be engaged and make a difference. And then you have to have people that still have some gas in the tank to be able to participate and add value.
Yeah. And it gets back to what we said earlier about managing those expectations so that people know that, hey, we have a horizon and a timeline for when you can leave, but this is what it looks like for us to make this whole thing make sense in the first place. So
I agree.
You mentioned earlier, you didn't really get into it, but you talked a little bit about some of the projects and client work that you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the recent projects that you are really proud to say, hey, that UES had a part in this? And I know you've done some work with FedEx. I guess there is a solar farm that was built near Reno, Nevada. How has that been for you guys in terms of the amount and type of work that UES is doing around the country?
Yeah, and those are both great projects that were highlighted in recent publications. And as we said earlier, that's exciting. Those projects are exciting for our teams to work on and be a part of. Both of those, the FedEx project and solar farms in general are perfect examples of projects that are driven by megatrends. In that case, e-commerce and the energy transition, which are literally changing the world. And UES, the company and the people, want to be a part of that. And so that's what I think is exciting about the opportunity. And what excites me about those projects is that, as we said earlier, when a local office can leverage the resume of the company, the people, the expertise, the experience to win and execute projects like that, when the whole is truly greater than the sum of the parts, then everybody wins. It's an overused term, but 1 + 1 = more than 3. But the whole better together narrative, I think that's really when it comes to roost is when we can do what we said earlier, is having a local office be able to execute work that they maybe prior to that didn't have the resume to win or execute.
Yeah. And, speaking of specifically those types of projects, has UES run into any challenges like ensuring the quality control and customer satisfaction on those two specifically, but then all the diverse projects that you guys are working on? There has to constantly be somebody that keeps an eye on everything to make sure that you don't drop one ball in the process.
Yeah, I totally agree. And good question, because I think the key is to have a good local project management execution philosophy. And then, as we said earlier, the network, in my mind, enables higher quality, because when you have a larger network, you have higher 1/1 and peer, horizontally peer reviews that can help make sure and ensure the quality of the product that we deliver, the quality of the solution, the reporting capabilities, et cetera. So I really think that the network is powerful when it comes to ensuring quality work that we do.
Yeah. What keeps you up at night? Real talk here, right? Because it's like, it's if we go back over and replay this interview in our heads, it's like, wow, everything sounds great. Dave is killing it and everything is amazing. But the reality is that we understand that there's always going to be challenges. And I think, your perspective on this, given the size of UES and given the history of success that you guys have experienced, still doesn't mean that everything is smooth sailing. So I'm just curious to know what is keeping you up at night that, is probably a larger concern for our industry.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of things that keep me up at night, but I'll say, I think 3 things come to mind. First, obviously, and you alluded to it earlier, continuing to hire and develop great people in a talent-constrained environment. That's a challenge that a lot of AEC firms face. And I think second of all, I think as a company of scale, it's important that UES take on a leadership role in advancing the industry when it comes to innovation and technology. As I said earlier, we have some exciting initiatives in flight that we think will improve add value to our customers, will change the way we interact with our customers, and will improve the employee experience. But we have to land those successfully. Sometimes that's a challenge. I think third is continuing to connect the dots as we become a larger and larger company. I think scale is one of the most underrated complexities. And, I think what I have seen is that when we connect the dots, in other words, connecting people around a problem and build networks within the company that maybe don't follow traditional organizational lines, magic things happen. We've seen that a lot within the company. But we just need to continue to do that at scale. And I think that's a challenge, and it becomes a bigger challenge every day.
Yeah. And obviously, as you find new people to bring onto the team and also identify what I call those, I use this expression called acres of diamonds. It's actually not a poem, but a story. But I think every firm has acres of diamonds right in their own backyard. You have people that are already part of UES that will ultimately and could ultimately rise to the occasion when called upon. It's really incumbent upon you and the rest of your leadership team, if they're listening to this, to make sure that they're constantly iterating and identifying that talent, because the moment that you let your finger off the trigger, so to speak, when it comes to that, is the moment that you miss out on an opportunity to elevate somebody that's ready for the next level.
Yeah, that's a great point. I agree with you. And I think we have a number of great people in the company, and we have to continue to find them and create an environment where they have a voice and continue to rise up when the time comes. And that's a challenge as the company grows.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I mean, listen, you've been really kind with your time. And I mean, we could go on and on talking about this. But is the hope that you guys plan to make Hot Firm again, number one hot firm for year 4? Or is that a possibility?
Well, that's always the goal. So we'll see. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I hope to certainly see you down in I believe it's in Tampa, and to see you guys have continued success. But certainly if anybody listening to this is so moved by just some of the words and commentary that you shared in this short half hour that we had together, if they wanted to connect or reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can reach out through our website, or we have contact information there, or people can reach out to me directly at dwitsken@teamues.com.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And we'll put that there. And we'll also put your LinkedIn profile there so people can check you out and see that you are the real deal, along with the rest of the 4,000 wonderful people that are part of the UES family. Dave, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I remember when we first talked about booking this, I was like, wow, this is going to be a minute before we're actually able to sit down, but we're finally here. We got something recorded that I think our audience is going to love. And it's always good to continue to tell the story of organizations and companies that are, essentially trying to do things the right way. And I believe UES is certainly endeavoring to do that, you and your leadership team. So on behalf of Zweig Group, on behalf of the Zweig Letter Podcast, I want to thank you for joining us today. And we really appreciate it. And we've got our popcorn and we're sitting by and we're going to watch the show as you guys continue to grow. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Randy. We appreciate the opportunity to share the UES story. And thanks again. And we're certainly pleased to continue to be a part of Zweig. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this. We will put everything in the show notes that we discussed today with Dave. There'll be additional commentary. There'll be links there, a way for you to get in contact with Dave. We'll put his LinkedIn information there. But we certainly, if this moves you in any way, shape, or form, we want to encourage you to kind of check in and read a little bit more about it, especially that article where Dave was interviewed by the Zweig Letter. It's called Growth in AEC, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. But there's a lot of cool things happening in 2024 here in the design industry space. As you all know, we're all a party to this. And so I certainly want to encourage you, if you're just sitting on the sidelines, you got to get active. And some of the advice and feedback that Dave gave today on the episode could be extremely helpful for you or for your organization as you start to think about what does the future look like for your company. So as always, you can always reach out to Zweig Group for help with any consulting related matters. We're here to serve you. And as always, the Zweig Letter Podcast comes out with some frequency, not every week, but it comes out. And we have seasons this year, which we're going to be launching. And we think you're going to really like it because we're going to have amazing people on the show like Dave and so many others. So stay tuned for what we're going to continue to do. And remember, you can always subscribe to the Zweig Letter newsletter. That comes out every Monday, rain or shine, right in your email inbox. You can share it with your whole team. You can sign up a whole company to get the Zweig Letter newsletter. I would encourage you to do that today. I'm Randy Wilburn, the host of the Zweig Letter Podcast, and we'll see you back here soon with another new episode of the Zweig Letter Podcast. Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zweig Letter Podcast. We hope that you can be part of elevating the industry and that you can apply our advice and information to your daily professional life. For a free digital subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.